See you soon.
Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my video all about the Loki Episode 6 ending, some of the stuff that it sets up, Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, Ant-Man 3, Quantumania, Spider-Man No Way Home, and a lot of the other bigger stuff like Marvel's What If series, which now makes a lot more sense how crazy it's getting with the multiverse. I will be doing full episode videos for Marvel's What If. It starts in a couple weeks, so be sure to subscribe to get all those videos if you're brand new to my channel. And careful for spoilers from everything that happened on Loki if you haven't seen the finale yet, because we'll be talking about everything. And thankfully, a lot of the producers, the writers, have come out since the episode has aired and clarified some of the details and the way that they use big characters like Kang, for instance. He's sort of like the prime Nathaniel Richards, the original who found Alioth and then won out in the battle of supremacy of timelines. But in effect, what they do here at the end of the episode creates the other comic book versions of Kang that we'll see in the upcoming Marvel movies. So I will explain that, and I will explain the time loops, because I know it got really confusing with the way he talks about seeing Sylvie again, like what does that mean? Yes, everything did kind of get rebooted, but when Loki does go back to the TVA, it's a slightly different version of the TVA, implying that a different Kang eventually won the next multiverse war, like the Multiverse War 2.0 that they were teasing. So I will explain the new timeline and why Loki is seeing it this way here, but why it's going to play out a little bit differently during the new Marvel movies that we're going to be watching the next couple of years. They're going to show us the consequences of what just happened, what Sylvie just did, in slightly different ways in the different Marvel projects that are coming up, including Marvel's What If episodes, big multiverse series with The Watcher, Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, which is a little bit different. Kang won't be the main villain of that, but there will be many Kangs from different alternate timelines warring with each other from across all realities while that's going on. So starting with the whole idea of the time loop is important because Kang needs Sylvie to kill him so that the timeline will start again, restart from zero, so to speak, and he can eventually become the person that he is supposed to be, that he's destined to be, the Nathaniel Richards or Immortus that we see before us, he who remains. Because the multiversal war that he talked about that happened in his past was responsible for turning him into this person that we see before us. So the multiverse war has to happen for him to become the final boss form version of himself, the most powerful version of himself that winds up in this citadel at the end of time, controlling everything. So he won't wind up coming to power unless Sylvie kills him. And because this is all happening with Loki and Sylvie traveling to the future, to the end of the timeline, for them, so to speak, for Ravonna, it actually hasn't happened yet in the past. A lot of that original multiverse war hasn't happened for them yet, but they are feeling the effects of it because of what Kang did after he won the war in his past. So if you've ever watched any of the Doctor Who episodes with different versions of the Doctor showing up at different points in his timeline, and he sort of clarifies why the timeline works on a loop in his 3D PowerPoint presentation that he gives them. It depicts the timeline as a circle around him, showing that it is a loop, which you see at the beginning of the episode depicted with the curvature of the sacred timeline curving around the Citadel at the end of time. So even though it kind of looks like the Bifrost, if you travel to the final point at the end of the timeline and looked forward, you would see the beginning of the timeline in the next moment. You would just walk into moment zero, like 0.001 seconds right after the Big Bang. And it just sounds like Kang did something after he won the multiversal war to engineer it so that it would do this, so that it would loop around on itself. And by making the timeline a loop, it also helps him maintain control of the entire timeline from start to finish simultaneously while he's sitting here at the end of time. They also use this metaphor of the hourglass turning upside down, time resetting when Sylvie kills him too, with a lot of their camera work, and with a lot of the hourglass imagery that you see baked into the architecture of the TVA. So for instance, when Loki and Sylvie are walking through the halls of the Citadel at the end of time before they meet Kang, the turning of the camera, like the rotating of the camera here, is meant to represent the turning of an hourglass, foreshadowing the turning of the time loop, things starting over again, everything repeating, and then eventually what happens basically after this moment, time restarts. The timeline proceeds like you would normally expect. You eventually get to the 31st century, a version of Nathaniel Richards discovers alternate timelines, like he said in his little PowerPoint presentation, and another multiverse war eventually breaks out again. But I'll talk about the twist at the end too with the new Kang statue, the idea that another Kang won that multiverse war and is now controlling the TVA, doing things a little bit differently from our Kang Prime or our Nathaniel Richards Prime, He Who Remains that we saw. But notice that you also see them walk into this room with the statues, with the broken one. On the floor, there's a circular pattern depicting the phases of the moon, like just sort of foreshadowing the idea that it just all moves in a loop. And also clarifying what's going on with this broken statue here, the fourth statue. Like, there was this whole lie about the 3 timekeepers. Why is there suddenly a 4th timekeeper here inside the Citadel at the end of time? What's the story here? I believe this 4th timekeeper statue is meant to be, for a big deep cut from the comics, the Oracle of Siwa. Within the Fantastic Four comics, they canonized the Oracle as the 4th timekeeper who was sort of written out of their history. He was exiled by He Who Remains to ancient Egypt and then wound up helping the Fantastic Four during one of their adventures when they were fighting another time travel villain that wasn't Kang. But just to be clear, the way that Kang, He Who Remains, explains here during the end of the episode, the timekeepers themselves don't actually exist. They were just a complete lie that he fabricated and just hid behind, used them as a proxy, so to speak, to give orders to everyone at the TVA, as opposed to this version of Kang that we see at the end of the episode, who seems like he didn't bother with that. Like he just flat out told them, I am Kang, I control everything, do what I say. The other really cool thing they revealed is how they sort of foreshadow what's going to be happening in the future Marvel movies that we'll see as we see this time war, this multiverse war play out. So inside the Citadel at the end of time, you probably noticed that on this asteroid here, this rock through the Citadel, all of Kang's technology, his architecture, you see all these gold veins running through everything. That's actually called kintsugi. It's a really cool Japanese art style. It's a thing in real life. The phrase kintsugi literally means golden joinery. And it's the practice of repairing something with gold to make the new version even stronger, even better. And the way they use it during the episode is a metaphor for the broken timelines, the fractured reality that happened after the first multiverse war and that will eventually happen again. So remember when Kang was explaining the big war and he said that Alioth was born because of all the tears in reality that were caused by the multiverse war? The idea is that their battle fractured all of reality, and that when Kang won the war, when he won out and defeated these other timelines, these other versions of himself, he had to repair his timeline and turn it into the sacred timeline. So the sacred timeline isn't just his original timeline, it's sort of a repaired version of his sacred timeline that he's also changed and altered to his liking. Remember how he tempted Loki and Sylvie? I can give you all these things, the Infinity Gauntlet. I can make it so that you've always lived together and nobody thinks that it's weird that you're kind of with a version of yourself. You have to imagine when Kang was repairing his timeline, kintsugi style, weaving everything together, he also took bits from other timelines that he thought were even better, making his timeline even stronger. And this whole concept also foreshadows what the future of the MCU is going to look like. So a lot of people are like, okay, well, they just rebooted the timeline, it kind of seems like. And it seems like a new version of Kang won out in this multiverse war. Like Loki is getting a spoiler for the ending of the new multiverse war. He jumps to the end, whereas the other Marvel characters in present day will watch it all play out. A lot of you asking, is this how they introduce a lot of the other characters like Deadpool, the X-Men characters that are going to survive the transition, even though most of them are probably going to be recast and rebooted versions of characters? Is this how Spider-Man No Way Home explains them crossing over with the Sony Spider-Man films? Is this how they get Daredevil from the Netflix Marvel Universe into the MCU? And I do think that they will rely on some of those tropes. Now, it won't be the same for every single character. Like, some characters will have always been around, like you just didn't notice them. But some characters like Deadpool, the weirder characters, will probably come from other alternate timelines, other universes. And like Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, Ant-Man 3, Quantumania, those are prime opportunities for them to sew together, to fix things after they defeat all these versions of Kang, to repair the timeline with a couple minor changes. Like a couple of things from alternate timelines wind up getting incorporated into the new main MCU timeline. So if you understand what kintsugi means and how they're using it during the episode, you kind of see that they're foreshadowing this coming. Like, okay, we're going to be combining a bunch of different things as we repair what's eventually going to become the new main MCU timeline. But that doesn't mean that they're going to use that twist to say bring Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man back to life. Kevin Feige did say that Doctor Strange 2 would introduce alternate versions of Avengers characters. Like, wait a minute, you don't look like the Avengers that I've known before. Another good example of that is the Marvel What If series. It's going to have a very dark version of Doctor Strange. So when all the timelines are branching out, going crazy during the episode, you have to imagine that the What If episodes will be taken from a lot of these different timelines. Also, for those of you asking about some of the connections between Kang and Iron Man, some of the stuff that's come before in the MCU, other Fantastic Four characters, there were some deleted scenes that do help sort of connect him to the other Marvel characters. For instance, also, if you look at his wrist device, the TemPad that he uses, the advanced TemPad that looks like it's made using that Kintsugi art style with all the gold arcs running through it, the design language is based on Iron Man's time travel wrist device. Like, it almost looks like a more advanced version of that. The whole idea is that Kang comes from the 31st century, so everything that he learns, all of his technology, is based on what's come before. So it's them saying, yes, there is a connection between Kang and the present-day Marvel characters, even though this is obviously a version that's millions of years old. We'll see a lot more of those connections with the younger versions of Kang when they show up in all these other Marvel movies. Some of the more evil versions, the more benevolent versions, the more Willy Wonka-looking versions that are a little bit manic and crazy. There's also a lot of biblical references going on here too when they're talking to Kang in this ending scene. He calls himself the devil. He's holding that apple when he meets them. That's not a coincidence. Sort of like he's tempting them with knowledge, like he is the snake in the Garden of Eden, tempting Eve with knowledge, which she bites from. She takes his bait. They said that David Fincher's Seven movie kind of influenced a little bit of what's going on here too. Kang emotionally manipulating Sylvie into killing him, the same way the villain of the Seven movie manipulated Brad Pitt's character into killing him at the end. They also said that they wanted this version of Kang, He Who Remains Kang, to feel like a young tech CEO. Odd, brash, as much of a genius as he comes off like a charlatan. Like you don't know if he's selling you a lie or vaporware, to make the tech CEO metaphor. Just playing into the idea that they can't completely trust him. Like Loki kind of believes him, Sylvie isn't ready to believe anything that he says. And the reason why they said Sylvie had such a hard time with this, sort of clarifying what Sylvie and Loki's conversation was all about, where she said, "I was pruned before you were ever born." What she means is before Loki was born as a variant, not before he was literally born, because they're both about the same age, and Loki in the MCU is just a little over 1,000 years old. So she was pruned when they were both children, then almost 1,000 years goes by, and Loki becomes a variant. So she has existed as a variant on the run for almost 1,000 years. And our Loki has only been a variant for a very, very short period. The other clever thing they do in this end credit scene is sort of like a post-credits, mid-credit scene. There is kind of one, it's the season 2 announcement, but what they're foreshadowing here, not only are they making the announcement, like, yes, Loki is getting a season 2 that's going to be awesome, but they're stamping our Loki's file as if they're processing him again, like it's this new version of Mobius from this different version of the timeline that didn't meet Loki originally, who doesn't know who he is. So even though there's going to be a time jump when we pick up in season 2 episode 1, it won't immediately start in this moment here. They're also using this to foreshadow some of the plot. Like, oh no, here we go again. If you didn't see the news after the finale aired, THR was reporting that Tom Hiddleston's Loki is supposed to now show up during Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness. So even though he does know a little bit of magic, he does have that flaming ancestral blade, he's of greater value to characters like Doctor Strange, who are incredibly powerful and understand the multiverse in a really deep way. He can tell Doctor Strange what happened, why all this is happening, who's behind it all, like this version of Kang is fighting across different timelines with versions of himself. And the idea is that that'll help Doctor Strange fix everything if he has a better understanding of what went wrong. But just to be clear, Kang is not going to be one of the main villains of Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness. There were also a lot of deleted scenes from the finale. I will do a big deleted scenes video sometime in the next day or two, because there's a lot of really cool stuff they didn't do, a lot of big Easter egg moments, and a lot of alternate versions of the ending. For those of you asking what happened to King Loki, don't worry, there's actually a good explainer for what happened with all those scenes. If there's any other big questions that you do have about what happened during the ending and how the new timeline works, why everything is looping, or if you're just confused about anything in general, just write those below in the comments and I'll use those in my future videos. I'll name a new giveaway winner when I post that next Marvel video, so while you wait for everything, click here for my full Loki Episode 6 finale video, and click here for that Deadpool and Korg Marvel crossover trailer. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys tonight.